Hey, Husker fans, Sam McKewon along with Jimmy Watkins for the Pick Six Podcast Spring Football Position Preview. We are doing the offensive line. Yes, the often maligned offensive line. In the first 4 years under Scott Frost, it looked pretty darn good in year one. And there was even some players who were drafted after year three. But as you look at that line last year, I think they probably got criticized a little bit more than they deserved. But, man, they got a lot of criticism, and they earned quite a bit of it. When you look over the first 4 years of Nebraska's offensive line play under Frost, that was coached by Greg Austin. I think C-, D+, in that area. You don't want to be too generous there because they have not been able to do the things that great lines do, which is move guys off the ball when you're handing the ball off to a running back and adequately protect a quarterback when he's dropping back in the pocket. It has been uneven at best for that offensive line over the first 4 years of the Frost era.
Not only that, they accrue a lot of penalties. I mean, you saw it at the Oklahoma game where it just seemed like no one could stay set. No one could stay set. It's a problem. They
didn't get the snaps figured out until the third or fourth year.
Exactly. And then they had one of the, I think they were bottom 80 or so in sack rate pretty much every year that they've been under Frost. And I will say this, though, to give them some cushion, they weren't blocking for the easiest guy to block for. They're not blocking in the easiest scheme to block for. Adrian Martinez, a guy who likes to run around with the ball. Scott Frost, a guy who likes to call some long developing plays, some wheel routes, some double moves, that sort of stuff. So
about 19 different kinds of running plays.
Of course, and we've talked about on the podcast before about how RPOs can scramble a kid's brain, especially a lot of these guys that come in playing prep football. It's just go forward and hit somebody. It's It's not all this extra mumbo jumbo that's been introduced to football these last few years. So definitely a lot of room for improvement there, but also it's been a tough job to execute.
It's going to be tough in spring for Donovan Raiola, who is now the new position coach. Here's why. Teddy Prohaska and Turner Corcoran probably aren't going to practice, so they're going to be out. That's your two tackles. Those are probably the two guys. Teddy would be the left. Turner would be the right. That's where they played for about a game until Teddy got hurt, and then Turner had to move back to left, and so on and so forth, like a game of musical chairs. Those two guys aren't going to be in camp, in spring camp. They're probably going to be watching from the sideline. So they're going to have to break in another left tackle. And good luck knowing exactly who that is. Might be Ezra Miller, the Iowa transfer. Could be, you just never quite know who they're going to put in that spot. Could be Kevin Williams, the Northern Colorado transfer. We feel good about Bryce Benhart being in spring camp. He was the right tackle for most of the season. He got benched briefly when Teddy Prohaska went to left tackle, but then he came back once Prohaska got hurt. I think we feel reasonably good about Nuri playing, right? So Nuruddin Nwili playing for maybe that left guard spot, maybe center, maybe right guard. He's probably going to play. He is the German foreign exchange student who came here and went to Colorado State, then came back, then redshirted a year sort of, then played this season as a starter. We feel good about that. Hard to know who the center is going to be when Cam Jurgens has left. There was a lot of things that Cam did well. I know he struggled with the snaps, but there were things he did well, including blowing guys off the ball. So they're going to have to find a center. I think that's a really important position in college football. Who are they going to put there? Is it going to be Piper? Ethan Piper? Is it going to be, Nwili? Is it going to be Trent Hickson, who's still in the program? Or is it going to be another person? You just don't know yet. It usually is a pretty sharp guy who can kind of command the offensive line. So a lot of question marks there. One more name I want to bring up, Henry Lutovsky. Maybe the biggest lineman on the team, about 6'6", 330 pounds. Him or Kevin Williams are the two biggest linemen on the team. And it'll be interesting to watch kind of what they do with him. And it'll be interesting to watch with Williams, who's a multi-year starter at Northern Colorado. Got suspended this year on a strange situation that ultimately he was sort of cleared of at Northern Colorado. So he's coming in here for 2 years. It's up in the air. It's a lot for a young offensive line coach to have to deal with.
First of all, you mentioned the center. It's not just the command that Cam Jurgens had of the offense. It's what Nebraska liked to do, and they like to send him. They were pulling that guy every opportunity they could. Did they have a guy on the roster who can replicate that sort of athleticism and succeed in that role? Because there's a lot going through your head when you're snapping the ball and doing that at the same time. Again, you bring in two experienced transfers in Hunter Anthony and Kevin Williams. That's going to raise some eyebrows. What does that say about what they feel about the tackle spot? And like you said, Donovan Raiola. There's a lot of analysis about Donovan Raiola's first media availability. Well, guess what? Guess what we love to talk about during spring football? There's one spring game. There's a ton of media availability.
That's right.
So I don't necessarily
enjoy those.
I don't necessarily believe that you have to be a fantastic quote to be a fantastic coach, but That storyline is not going away anytime soon. Donovan Raiola is going to be a major part of the story of this offensive line.
You can't call what you can't block, and oftentimes Nebraska was trying to call stuff they couldn't block last year, and it led to mistakes. One more name I want to remember here is Brock Bando. He's coming back for another season. He's a sixth-year guy, and I think Brock could have a role too. The question is not so much do they have bodies, right? They got a lot of guys in there. They're all kind of big and they're somewhat athletic. It's who's the best five to start. And is that best five the kind of five that's going to be able to block Oklahoma, Michigan, Wisconsin, Iowa with any consistency? That's what we're going to find out. The other thing is they got to figure out what their scheme's going to be, and then Donovan Raiola is going to have to learn what it's like to be a position coach day in and day out with guys who aren't pros. So most of the work that he's done is with the Chicago Bears, and he did fine work there, but those guys are professionals. Some of them were older than he was. In this case, you're dealing with 19 to 22-year-old kids who are naturally going to have bad days. And Raiola was an offensive lineman in college himself, but it's not always going to be easy. You're going to have to sort of deal with the ups and downs of what it means to be, a teenager to a young adult. And we'll see how Raiola handles that. All right, for Jimmy Watkins, I'm Sam McKewon. That is our position preview for the offensive line. Thanks, Husker fans.